All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, each of the last 4 years has seen the Miami Heat qualify for the NBA's play-in tournament. And after being able to get out of the play-in order to get to the playoffs in each of the last 3 years, the Heat's luck finally ran out with their 127 to 126 overtime loss to the Charlotte Hornets on Thursday night. Now, yes, the injury to Bam Adebayo in the first half had a huge outcome on this game. Make no mistake about it. But if you're the Heat, you've got to stop putting yourself in this situation where you have to go through the play in order to get to the playoffs. Now, in 2023, we saw Miami come out of the play in and they made it all the way to the NBA Finals as an 8 seed. But more often than not, coming out of the play in really puts you at a disadvantage going into the playoffs. And the Heat have been one and done in the NBA playoffs in each of the last 2 years. Now, Miami finished this regular season with a record of 43 and 49, but the Eastern Conference was tougher this year. And because of that, Miami finished 10th. And it's one of those where, the Heat talked about looking to avoid having to go through the play-in this year, but losing 7 out of 8 coming down the stretch in a key patch of games right there really put the kibosh on them for being able to finish in the top six. But going forward, what needs to change for the Heat? Well, Miami's got to get healthier, okay? Because Bam Adebayo was the only expected starter, or the only starter rather, for this team, who finished in, or who was able to appear rather, in at least 70 games this season. Tyler Herro only getting to play in 33 games during the regular season really hampered things for Miami, in my opinion. With that said, how different is this roster going to look for next season? Tyler Herro's entering the last year of his deal. Norman Powell is a free agent, and Andrew Wiggins has a player option for $30 million for next season. What's the chances that we see all of these guys back in the Heat uniform next October? We have to wait and see on that. Now, another question for Miami is going to be, should we expect them to make a play for Giannis if the Milwaukee Bucks were to put him on the market this summer? I think they would be. If you look at the Heat, and to me, I think this is part of the problem why they've been on that, cusp, if you will, of just having to vie for the play-in. I know they had Jimmy Butler several years ago. Jimmy Butler had some injuries that he was dealing with as well. But nonetheless, Miami has lacked star power for quite some time. So with that said, if the Bucks were to put Giannis out there, I think Miami would definitely make a play for him. Would they be able to get him? If that were to be the case, I'm not sure. We'd have to wait and see. But nonetheless, you ask yourself, what do the Heat need in order to become one of the top teams in the East? Well, I look at it like this. When healthy, Miami can be a good team, not a great team. I look at it, they have several twos and threes as far as options on that team, but they don't have a one. And they had their one before with Jimmy Butler. They traded him. We all know the reasons behind that. But nonetheless, they haven't had their one since then. Okay. So in order for them to take that next step, they're going to need that guy. So let's see what happens right there. You look at it, you still got Eric Spoelstra, one of the longest tenured coaches in the NBA. And you think about it, Spoelstra's been the guy for Miami since 2009. And I think he's been a quite successful head coach. Sometimes I don't think that he gets the credit that he deserves. I'm not going to sit up here and say he's Red Auerbach, but nonetheless, to do it for as long as he has speaks volumes. So you ask yourself, what is going to be next for the Heat? Well, clearly this roster has to get better. And it's always tough because I ask myself, how many players around the NBA are ready to sign up for the Heat culture. And I know some people out there feel like the Heat culture is a thing of the past. I think it still is a thing, maybe not as prevalent as it once was, but nonetheless, I don't know if everybody around the league is ready to sign up for that. But the Heat, if you're Miami, you have to like find a way to shed your reputation as being the kings of the play-in. And I think this is an example to the rest of the Heat are at least an example to the rest of the NBA. Getting to the play-in is one thing, getting out of the plan and making an impact in the postseason is a little bit tougher. We saw the Heat do it several years ago when they got to the finals, and I think a lot of that, they caught some teams with injuries and also the way that they matched up with certain teams. But nonetheless, we saw what happened the other night in the playing game with Charlotte. There's a possibility of a guy like Bam getting hurt. Don't get me wrong, that could happen at any time of the season, playoff series or not. But nonetheless, if the Heat didn't have to go through that, and if Bam doesn't get hurt, we're probably talking about them in a different light at this moment. But nonetheless, you want to try to avoid that at all costs. And I think I give credit to the NBA for implementing that because it's put more of an emphasis, if you will, on the regular season for teams, and definitely coming down the stretch trying to avoid that, or at least be in the top six and have to avoid the play-in. But if you're Miami, clearly it's back to the drawing board. There's going to be a lot of what ifs if Bam was not injured by the incident with LaMelo Ball, but nonetheless, that's neither here nor there. The Miami Heat season is over, and they've got to try to get this thing better. Clearly, I think there's going to be some roster changes for this team, like it is any other team in the offseason, clearly after you come up short. But there's some pieces there, but it's going to be interesting to see what direction that the Heat do go in this summer. Is Norman Powell going to be back? Does Andrew Wiggins want to be in Miami? We got to wait and see. And of course, are they going to sign Tyler Herro to a long-term deal, or could he be part of a package for a superstar player like Giannis? We've got to wait and see. But nonetheless, let's see what the next step is for the Miami Heat as their season came to a screeching halt. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, you know what to do, folks. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it will be my pleasure to do the same in return. And that also goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you're on Facebook, definitely be sure to check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks. My name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.